Water from a lake, rain, and ice foreshadow death in Road to Perdition. You can almost guarantee someone dies whenever there's water present in this movie. Michael tells his son that ice helps preserve the body while they're at a wake. It's similar to the oranges motif in the Godfather trilogy. Thomas Newman's score is ethereal and resembles what heaven might sound like, or whatever you might hear when you die. Probably won't hear nothing, but whatever. If you've heard the music for the Angels in America soundtrack, that HBO miniseries, it's similar to that. I think Newman has a way of handling soundtracks when films deal heavily with death. Road to Perdition is an examination of father-son relationships and violence. In Paul Newman's final on-screen film role, he plays John Rooney, who's reaching old age, with a hot-headed and jealous son, Connor, played by Daniel Craig. The director, Sam Mendes, works with Craig later in Skyfall and Spectre. The cinematography choices are stylistic and stand out among other fare. They did the freaking dolly zoom, for crying out loud, when they introduced Harlan Maguire, played by Jude Law. There are a lot of shots that are just beautifully composed by longtime cinematographer Conrad Hall in his final film that he worked on. He also worked with Paul Newman in Butch Cassidy and the Sundance Kid, Cool Hand Luke, and Harper. And he can capture Newman quite well with his striking blue eyes. The opening shots where we see Michael Jr. on the beach are just simple and heavenly. With the introduction of Harlan Maguire, the guy is just a little cartoonish. He doesn't feel real other than just being a psychopath and a guy obsessed with the dead. And I didn't necessarily dislike it. I bought it in order to continue enjoying the movie because the movie was really fun to watch and I was invested in seeing Michael and his son survive this ordeal. I don't know if you could just have a normal person play a killer because normal people generally have some sort of empathy. This guy's just freaking crazy. You either suppress the emotions or lean into the quirkiness or weirdness in order to be a murderer. Speaking of depressive murderers, Tom Hanks' portrayal of Michael Sullivan Sr., who became Chicago mob boss John Rooney's top enforcer and surrogate son after being orphaned at an early age, is cold. He appears emotionally detached for most of the film. There has to be some compartmentalization to be able to kill people and carry on with your life. If you try to think of your victims as real people, you're going to hesitate and get yourself killed. He doesn't have to act tough to be tough. There is a stoicism to his personality. John genuinely likes Michael and views him as a son, but he's not his son. He's not his blood and never will be. His son was stealing from a mob by withdrawing money from the names of dead people, but despite John's frustrations with Connor, it would take death to keep him from protecting his buffoon of a son. This triggers Michael to kill his adoptive father, and while the rain is pouring, it's difficult to see the tears in his eyes as they blend in with the storm. John doesn't beg for mercy, and he fully accepts what's happening. All of his decisions have led to this moment, and he says,
I'm glad it's you.
This hits a lot of emotions as we see a man accept his own demise because he chose to defend his blood. Some would say it's just a part of the business or the life he chose. I think deciding to kill Paul Newman off screen was a good choice. It shows respect towards the actor near the end of his career and doesn't gratuitously send him off in his final on-screen film role. It also respects violence but doesn't glorify it. We see every one of his henchmen get shot up by Michael, but not his adoptive father. Michael didn't want to really kill him, but believed he had to in order to get the mob to give up Connor. It is a moral dilemma for John, who is in an inherently immoral business, so that goes out the window. There is no salvation for these damned men. Michael Jr. notices that his dad is more affectionate towards Peter and shows less warmth to Michael Jr. He goes as far as to ask him if he likes Peter more and mentions that he's different with each of them. Michael Sr. at least admits why, but he's not being mean about it. He's afraid that his son would become violent like him as he sees more of himself in Jr. and calls Peter a sweet boy. Michael Jr. instigated a fight at school after witnessing what his father does for a living. He didn't process his emotions very well. I really liked the imagery of Michael meeting John at a church after discovering that Connor is withdrawing money using the names of dead men. Then John tells him to meet him downstairs. It's like going down to hell to discuss business, as it's below ground level. They even talk about how none of them are going to see heaven, but Michael's son can. John tells him to make sure that happens. None of these men are right, and even John knows that there are only murderers in this room. No one is necessarily morally superior than each other. Seeking revenge is almost a fool's errand, but it feels right, especially if one believes that they've been wronged.
He who seeks revenge digs two graves, Barry. It's a tale as old as time. Damn.
I also thought that Connor was just violently nuts and jealous, which is never a good combo. Think back to The Long Hot Summer with Ben Quick and Jodie Varner, where Jodie's father, Will, was taking a liking to the tenacity and scheming of Ben Quick. Then Jodie burns a barn trying to kill his father, and everyone thinks Ben did it, even though he was very far away from the scene of a crime. Similarly, John takes a liking to Michael's more even temperament versus Connor's cold and hot-tempered demeanor. Connor thinks that he's pretty much an heir apparent and deserves more admiration and respect from his father. He's entitled and jealous of Michael. It's odd that he's not married and doesn't have any kids, but it's kind of self-explanatory. I think that's another reason why John likes Michael, since he has a family and his son doesn't. Michael Jr. was played with an innocence that needed to be maintained. He was always curious in trying to figure out what his father does for a living. He witnessed a murder and he saw a gun resting on his dad's bed. The actor Tyler Hoechlin played a fine line between a bratty kid and someone that needs to grow up fast. He sees that he needs to listen to his father no matter what in order to survive these circumstances. The father is already damned, but the son is not. And at the film's conclusion, the son states that was the last time he ever held a gun. His father knew that his son couldn't shoot Harlan, so he absolved him of that as he succumbed to his fatal wounds. He sacrificed his life to end the cycle of violence. He must have known that it was essentially a suicide mission, but he had no choice in order to protect his son. John Rooney failed his son by not holding him accountable for his actions. Michael protected his son from that lack of accountability, as his son is an innocent child that got wrapped into something that he never should have seen. It was curiosity, not willful, malicious intent. Choosing blood over accountability is wrong. If your family member murdered somebody, you don't just let them get away with it and hide their crime. That harms society and the victim's family. Yes, it may harm you personally, but your family member decided to violate the social contract. Violence has the potential to be a never-ending cycle, but you need to make the choice to continue it or end it.